Hello, Christina.
Hi,
It's
Celine.
it's really nice having you in my podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Starting the morning. Yeah, got my to-do list, got my coffee, so I'm good to go.
Great. So today in this episode, today this episode is especially for French entrepreneurs
Hmm.
who want to work with American clients.
Sure.
So I wanted to ask you, you were born and raised in the US in
Yeah.
Mississippi, am I right?
Yeah, good. Yeah, in Mississippi. That's right.
And you moved to France 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. You did your homework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if it was a long time ago, do you remember the challenges you faced?
Mm. Oh yeah, totally. So I think some of the biggest challenges that I remember facing was, of course, the language. I studied French in the US. I did my bachelor's degree in French, but when I arrived in France, I just felt like there was what we learned in school, and I was like the best student in my class in French class because I loved it. But then I got to France, and I was like, this is nothing like what we learned in French. And I had good teachers and everything. So it's not that, it's just that there's a big disconnect between what you do in the classroom and real life. And so it took me probably a good 6 months, I think, to really start to feel somewhat comfortable in real conversation. So there was definitely the language. There was also just the challenge of just not knowing how anything worked. I mean, basic vocabulary of, coming into a new country and learning words like état des lieux, and then I was like, I don't even know what this is, because you would never learn that in a university course. So just not knowing how things work and not having the vocabulary for those things was a big challenge. I mean, you just feel really stupid and lost, and totally unable to function in society, let's say. And then also I think there was just kind of like the question of like loneliness, of feeling, even though I had friends, like I made friends pretty easily, but I think you don't have that connection to, people that and that who share the same culture and the same values as you. I mean, I remember like one night I was feeling really lonely. I went to a phone booth because back then it was, you had the phone booths and the little cards, and like calling up the people at the pizza place where I worked when I was a student just to have somebody to talk to from back home. And I was like, hey, I'm in France, and what are you doing? And how are the people? And like, I was like, oh my goodness. So I think it was the language, not understanding how things work, and then sometimes just feeling totally lonely and isolated also.
Mm. And how long did it take to feel more confident?
Um, well, I think what was good in that program is that they put you with a French person who was like your study buddy or something like that. So I had somebody who was there to guide me and to explain things and to sort of like, but these are the things you need to know about French culture and French pop culture and the references. That really helped. But even having that, I would say it was, yeah, probably it took me the first semester because I was doing that study abroad for a year. The first semester to start feeling kind of comfortable. I think by the end of the second semester, I was like, all right, I kind of get this. And then when I came back to France to do my master's degree after that, that was sort of when I started feeling comfortable, really. Yeah. So it took a year basically.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I imagine you like the French culture if you stay because
Yeah.
you live in France. So
Exactly. Yeah, no. I do. I very much enjoy it. I've been here. I did my master's degree here in Grenoble. I met a French guy. We got married, then we got divorced, but then I decided to stay here because I like it here. My friends are here, my business is here, my house is here. So my life is here. And I did kind of ask the question. I was like, do I want to go back? And no, I didn't want to go back. So I'm still here.
great. And if you could go back in time and talk
Yeah.
to yourself when you first moved abroad, what
Mm.
would you say to yourself?
Mm. I think I would say don't. when things don't go the way that you want them to go, or you kind of face like a situation, like for example, I did job interviews and things like that, and then I would, for whatever reason, not get hired for the position, and I would automatically think, oh, it's because I'm a foreigner, it's because I'm not French, etc. And I don't know if it was that. Maybe it was, but maybe it wasn't. But I would say, going back, looking back in time, whenever you face setbacks in your life as a person in a foreign country, don't automatically assume that it didn't work out because because that's not your native language, or because you're the foreigner. Maybe it's just I wasn't available when they wanted someone to work. I don't know. But I think I did have a tendency to say, oh, this didn't work because I'm a foreigner. And I don't think that was, necessarily the truth, in fact. So I would say don't assume anything. Just look at the facts and move on, and try to get your next goal.
Great, I love it.
Mhm.
When you started being an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
when was it? I assume it wasn't 20 years ago.
No, 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 not at all. It was more like almost 10 years ago, actually. So yeah, about halfway after. It was 2015. And the way that happened, it was really accidental, in fact. When I came to do my master's degree, my goal was to become a professor at the university. Like, I wanted to teach American civilization at the university and have this nice, easy, smooth job. I don't know if academia is actually very easy and smooth, but that was the perception I had. So I wanted this kind of job. And what happened was, after I did my master's degree, then at the end, we had sort of like career orientation. And they said, oh, well, sorry, you don't have a European nationality. You can't take the agrégation. I mean, you can take it, but you can't do anything with it. And I'm like, I'm not taking it if it's just for fun. Um, so I said, okay, well, I can't become a university professor, which is kind of what I studied and planned to do. So what can I do? And I got a job at teaching at the Chamber of Commerce, working in training companies, going into companies and helping them with their international communication, with their English, working with Americans, all of those things. And I found out that I really enjoyed it, in fact. So I had that setback in my career plan that I had imagined. Started working in these companies. Few years later, I had a friend who, she did videos on YouTube to teach French. You might know her. It's Geraldine from Comme Française. Um, and and I was like, that looks like fun. I want to make YouTube videos too, just to give to our clients at the training company for kind of interactive homework, let's say. And I started doing the YouTube videos, and then people started contacting me saying, hey, I saw your YouTube video. I like the way that you teach. I like your approach. Do you do lessons over Skype? Because at the time it was Skype and not Zoom. And, I had never done that before, but I said, yeah, I can do that. How hard can it be? Let's try it. So I said, yeah, we can do this. Let's decide how many hours you want to do. I'll send you a quote. And I got started that way. And it built up from there. So I had one client, then two clients, and then more clients. And then I had to bring on some teachers to help me with the clients, because there were too many. And it just kind of built up from there, in fact. So it was not my plan, but I would say, yeah, I started getting enough clients to say to the company I was working at, thank you very much. It's been a good experience, but I think I'm going to try this on my own now. And it was a super scary move. I probably hesitated far too long, but that's how it got started.
Oh, great. And how do you help French speakers to improve
Mm,
their French skills? How
mm.
do you do it?
So what we do is, we are going to be able to help people, I would say, in their journey. We're really focusing a lot now on helping European and French entrepreneurs who want to get into the American market, to go and get a more American clients, find investors for their startup in the US, etc. And sometimes it does start with, we need to first improve your English skills. So we'll look at what they need to work on, what their goals are, and then we're going to really work with them concretely on, their situations, their documents, their slide decks, whatever, to help them get their English up to speed if necessary. And then when they start really going into the American market, then we're going to work on things like, how do you build up your influence in your industry in the American market, which is super competitive? Starts things like LinkedIn strategy, reaching out to people, your publishing strategy. How do you do your pitch? And pitch really in not just like a slide deck, you're on a stage in front of people, pitch in any kind of different situation, a social situation, an official, investor pitch, whatever, working on your pitch. What are you going to be publishing about to get your message out there so that when people Google you, they find you, they see what you're all about? And we kind of infuse all of that with that lens of American culture. So how do you do all of that, taking into consideration, American values, American business culture, American practices, so that when you're out there, what your American clients or your American investors are seeing is going to resonate with them and make them interested in what you're doing.
Oh, great. So let's start talking with improving their language skills. And
Mm.
after we are going to talk about to crack the code of US business culture.
Yeah, sure.
I saw this in your website.
Yeah.
I love it. Crack the code of
Thanks.
US
Yeah.
business culture. But imagine that the French speaker needs to improve his English skills. So you said on your website that your training, thanks to your training in neuroscience, you know how the brain works, so you can help people learn English faster and better.
Right.
What is something most traditional teachers don't know but should know to better help learners?
Right. So I think one thing that that is really a key part of the neuro-language coaching approach is it's this idea that, first of all, you're co-constructing the session with your client or with your student. So it's never the teacher or the coach going in and saying, this is what we're going to do, and I'm going to take you through, a program or a session that I've already decided. Which might sound kind of basic, but when you look at how languages are taught traditionally, and even, when I was working at the Chamber of Commerce and things like that, that's what we would do. We would pick out the lesson from a book or internet or something like that, and we would go in and we would take the person through that lesson, basically. So in the neuro-language coaching approach, you're really always co-constructing what are the objectives. You're dividing the objectives into two types of objectives, which is the mechanical goals. So this is their English goals, vocabulary, pronunciation, etc. You're defining the English goals, the mechanical goals. And you're also looking at specific mastery goals, where these are the communication goals. What do you want to be able to do with this language? Is it, be able to pitch an investor? Is it making small talk? Is it, I don't know, emails in English, whatever, the communication aspect. And you're going to marry those together in the same session, but focusing on each one separately so that your brain, it's a bit like when you're sitting at your desk all day and then you get up and stretch. You just kind of move and do something a little different. That's what that approach is about, because it helps the brain to stay more alert. The student is in control of the session. And as you're progressing through the session, the coach is always asking the permission of the student. Instead of saying, let's go to the next exercise, it's just, can we go to the next exercise? And what this does in the brain for the student is it makes them feel like, I'm not just following and kind of submitting to what the teacher is making me do, but I'm the one who's giving the permission, and I'm in charge of this session, actually. And it just kind of helps to, the brain to relax, and it just kind of makes you more receptive to learning. And that's how it has that potential to help you to learn faster.
Yeah, it's like taking back control of our learning.
Exactly. That's
we are not
totally
a
it.
student anymore.
Yeah.
When we were a kid, there was the teacher, and we were the students,
Yeah.
but now they are adults, they are learners, and they want to take back control of their learning.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm always I don't know, I don't want to say surprised or shocked. Maybe a bit of both. But when someone comes to us and we're doing the diagnostic session and I say, tell me what you've tried in the past. And very often we'll have these people who are 40, 50 years old, and they'll say, I had a really bad teacher when I was in middle school in English class. I'm like, that was 30 years ago, and you're still traumatized by that experience. And I'm not saying all teachers who taught English in schools are bad. That's not it, because we also have people say, I had a great teacher that was very inspiring. But very often, they will start off by talking about their bad experience learning English in school. And I think it is because, like you said, it's the teacher, the student, there's that relationship. You must do these things that I tell you because I'm the teacher. And of course, it's very hard to do personalization when you have 30 children to manage. Let's not say that they have as easy a job as I might have. But it does mean that that approach is not optimal for a lot of people and that it does do a lot of damage. And so we try to also maybe repair that damage.
Yeah, I imagine. And
Mm.
it's one-on-one? Is
And
it?
it's very often one-on-one. Really depending, we're very flexible in that. We'll kind of look at what's the person, what's their needs. If we see that, maybe they're in a company or a team setting, and there are certain parts of the accompaniment that we're doing with them that where it does make sense to have a group setting. Like, for example, I'm working with a company in Switzerland, and we're doing group sessions for things like presentation skills for the American market, an overview of American business culture, because that can be done in a group setting in a coherent way. However, if you're maybe working on someone's, presentation, like if you're working on their specific presentation because they're preparing it, then it makes sense to do an individual coaching session. So it really depends on what makes the most sense for the objective.
I get it. And I'm wondering if you've changed gears and now help people from a marketing perspective more than a language perspective. I
Mm,
have, I have the impression that a few years ago, it was
yeah.
you were only focused on improving their language skills.
Yeah.
Now it's more on the marketing perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And the reason for that was actually because what we noticed is people would come to us and say, I'm doing business with Americans or internationally. It would be a mix of both sometimes. But I'm going to all of these events in the US, going to CES, whatever. But I don't know, nothing's happening. I think I need to work on my English skills. And so they would come to us because, like you said, it's, business English with Christina. I'm going to go and improve my English skills. And we would start looking at, what they were doing, and we would realize it's not the English that's the problem here. It's your way, like the way that you talk about your product, the way that you pitch, the way that you, kind of go into that negotiation, et cetera. Your English is not the problem. Yes, there's things we can clean up, but what's blocking here is really your way of using that English, in fact, because when you're going to be talking about your product, you're talking about the tech specs. You're not talking about the benefit, and you're using a lot of jargon, and I don't even understand what you're saying. And so we would see that they kind of would come in because they thought they had an English problem. And when we started working with them, we noticed that they had more of a communication problem, in fact. And so then we said, well, you know what? If we want to, maybe make ourselves stand out a little bit, let's communicate more on the fact that we're going to help them with their sales, with their marketing, with their, personal branding, all of those kinds of things that are going to come in and really, kind of be in the service of those efforts that they're making in the American market. And their English, like I said, it can be cleaned up, but it's often not the biggest problem. And we said, well, let's talk about that.
Ah, interesting. And do you think we don't need to be bilingual to work with American clients?
No, totally. You don't need to be bilingual. Before we get into that, let's define bilingual. I define bilingual as being totally, pretty much as comfortable in a foreign language as in your native language. And even I would say, I've lived in France for 20 years. I've built up my business in French, et cetera. Would I consider myself bilingual? I would say yes, but with a slight advantage in English. So, do you need to be bilingual? No. However, and especially, in the US, it is, from the history of the country, it's a land of immigrants. We've just got one of the things that Americans love to do is genealogy and tracing their ancestry back to which country did their ancestors come from. And it's often not so many generations ago. So we have this, I would say, we're just used to dealing with people from other countries and other cultures and other languages. Might depend on, if you're in New York versus if you're in the middle of Kansas, that's going to be a little bit of a different experience. But you don't have to be perfectly bilingual in order to do good business. And I'm actually doing a series of interviews on my podcast right now with some French or European entrepreneurs who are doing business in the US. And you'll hear them, they've got their accent, their English is good, but it's not perfect. Like my French is good, but it's not perfect. And that doesn't stop you, because what's going to be important is, again, your messaging, your ability to do business, your energy, your enthusiasm. Of course, the numbers in your company are going to be important as well. But yeah, you don't have to be perfect in a language, despite what some people might think.
I 100% agree.
Mm,
And even if my English is not perfect, I like to get out of my comfort zone. And
exactly.
I've been working with Hello French with
Yeah,
Cecilia, an American team, uh,
yeah,
since last year. And I want to keep improve my language skills, but
yeah,
I'm not bilingual yet, and I don't know if one day I will be. But
yeah,
I'm fluent. I can have a conversation. I can understand. I can, yeah, we can
exactly.
talk. So I think it's enough. And when we are able to do that, we
Yeah,
have to move to get out of our comfort zone, because
exactly.
that's why I've decided to start this podcast, because
Yeah.
I want to talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of
Mm,
French people, American people.
yeah,
Yeah, I want to use, no, no, how can I say that?
yeah,
To use my English skills.
yeah.
Because when
That's
I
it.
talk to my language partners, it's easy. Uh, we give feedback to each other. We make
Mm,
progress together. But I want to talk to other people to,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. To sort of go out there and, let's say, in the real world,
yeah, in the real world.
when you're with a language partner, it's always a very nice environment because everybody's there. You're both there to learn and you're there to support each other, etc. But then when you sort of take your language out into the real world, people are mostly going to be nice and polite, etc. But you're really confronting that, my language skills in a real conversation. And, this is what I experienced in French, is like sometimes your ego gets a little bruised in that experience. But every time it does, it makes you a little stronger. And so I think when we're learning a language and we're working in a language, we sometimes have to put our ego aside in order to move forward and to accomplish things.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. And do you think it's possible to work with American clients while living in France and never having been to the US?
Oh, that's a good question. So, is it possible to work with American clients while living in France? Yes, that is possible. I've got clients who do that. Now, they do go to the US, but there is one company. Very interesting story. I found this and I want to get him onto my podcast. I can't remember. His name is Anthony something, but his company is Urgent Time. And what they do is they were in, the show Qui veut être mon associé, um, to present their product, their service, which is basically video calls for emergency services. So like when you call 911 in the US, let's imagine you see someone lying on the ground, you can do a video call, which is very secure. It's not like FaceTime or whatever, very secure, so that the emergency services can see what's happening and help you, to manage the situation while you're waiting for the emergency service or the ambulance to arrive. And when I spoke to him, and he said, "Yeah, we're going into the U.S. market. We've already got a third of the U.S. territory." And I said, "So do you have like an office over there?" He's like, "No, we do everything from France." And I believe they do have partners in the U.S. So can you do it from France? Yes, but you're going to probably need some contacts in the U.S. Or who are at least going into the U.S. Can you do business in the US without ever going to the US? I suppose if you're selling something like a SaaS, software as a service, some sort of digital product, yeah, that's possible. But if you're, I don't know, selling drones or so, some sort of like physical object, at some point you're going to have to take a plane and go over to the US to do some business.
And for you, is it the same if we talk about B2B or B2C?
Yeah. So that's gonna be different. Just because I think it the same as it would be in Europe, when you're selling to a consumer versus selling to a business, it's not quite the same experience, not looking at the same budgets, same sort of timelines in terms of making decisions, the number of people who are involved in making that decision, et cetera. However, perhaps the difference I would say is that in the US things go faster. Not as fast as, it's not like you arrive, you jump off the plane, you go and talk to one client and they're like, "Yeah, let's do it. It's not like some magic Disney world of business. There is a decision-making process and it does take some time, but it takes generally much less time than in Europe.
Hmm, great. And why do you think that the US market offers immense potential for European entrepreneurs?
Yeah, there's a couple of good reasons for that. The first reason is that it is a single market. The US, it's speak the same language, same currency. There's the same federal regulations. Now, each state does have their own individual laws and regulations, but you're going into a single market compared to Europe, where you've got a French market, a Spanish market, just you've got lots of little fragmented markets, each with their own language, their own culture, their own way of doing business, their own regulations, etc., which just makes it more complex when like I know in my business, just when I have to do an invoice to a client in the Czech Republic versus Switzerland versus Luxembourg with the VAT, oh my goodness, it's so complicated. So you don't have that sort of problem in the US market. So that's one reason. Second reason is that, for better or for worse, Americans are big consumers. Whereas in Europe, there is a lot of emphasis on things like, sobriety and consuming less, et cetera, which is, good for a lot of reasons. And like I said, for better or for worse, Americans really like to consume things. So if you've got something, they're going to have a good chance of buying it if it works and if it appeals to them. So there's a little less reflection in the buying process, which is good for business. The third reason is Americans are generally less averse to risk. And this is where it's really interesting for things like startups. I've worked with some med techs and biotechs who are always looking to the US because it's faster. And like they say, we go into Europe, we're pitching, we're trying to raise funds. People want to see that we've got proof of concept, that we've got lots of clients, that we've got the money, that we basically are already established and our things work, and they want to be sure that they're not taking any kind of risk or not too much risk. We go into the US and we talk about it and people are like, "Hey, that looks like a great idea. Yeah, let's invest in it and we're going to see where it goes." And so there's sort of that more openness or more willingness to bet on companies, products, services that don't necessarily have a whole lot of proof that, that they've been proven in the market. And that also helps to sort of accelerate the business development because, like I said, it just goes faster. People are less afraid to take those risks, which if you're in a startup or anything innovative, you've got to be in front of people that are not afraid to take risks.
Mm. And do you think for a French entrepreneur who is working with French people, if this person doesn't have any testimonials, it will be really complicated for him to have his first customers? And do you think in the US it's less complicated?
I think either way, testimonials play a very important role in showing people, hey, I know what I'm doing. Because you want to hear those stories from people that have worked with you. Now, for someone who is maybe starting out and they don't have any testimonials, because when you're starting out, you don't have any clients, you don't have testimonies. How do you get the first client? What I would recommend is finding maybe like 4 people who are in your target audience and just saying like, hey, can I work with you for a month, for example, for free? I'm, building up this offer, building up this thing. And I know, I'm pretty sure that it works, but I need to test it out with a couple of people. I'm willing to work with you for free. And in exchange, can you just give me a testimonial at the end if we get the results that you want? And just, offer to work with somebody. And what you're doing is you're trading your time. If you're starting out, you're probably also still, learning about your target audience, learning about how best to help them and what works and what doesn't work. And I'd say you're paying with your time in exchange for that training, basically. Whereas, they're going to say, all right, this program, it might not be the greatest program, but I'm not paying any money for it. I know you, I follow you on social media, it looks good. Let's try it out. And yeah, and if it works, I'll give you some testimonials. And so you can go about it that way and just really see it. I think we all like to think that when we start our business, we're going to dream up the perfect offer. We're going to release it into the world and people are going to jump on it, really good. That doesn't happen in the real world. You've got to get out, you've got to test it in the real world, try it out. And I would say, like you pay to go to a school, or at least in the US, you pay to go to a school. You pay to go to a school to learn things, or you pay for training. See that as I'm paying not with my money, but I'm paying with my time to get this real world experience, and I'll get a testimonial at the end, which can help further my business.
Yeah, I love it. And your value proposition is really powerful. I loved it.
Oh, thanks.
Then revolutionize your LinkedIn presence in 2 hours per day and get 10 sales meetings with US clients in just 6 weeks. And it's really, really concrete. 2 hours per day, 10 sales meeting, 6 weeks. We know what we are going to do. And
exactly.
It's really concrete. And this kind of value proposition, do you think this kind of value proposition will work with French people too? Or is it, I'm trying to understand the differences between American buyer psychology and French buyer psychology.
Yeah, right. So I would say that, what I've seen is in France, people in France, they know Justin Welsh, they know Alex Hormozy, they know Cody Sanchez, etc. So there is a lot of American influence that is already present in the French market, let's say, in French entrepreneurial culture, which I do think does influence buyer psychology. Now, there are differences. For example, Americans, you're gonna need to build up the relationship very often. A lot of times we think, oh, Americans, you can go in, you can say hello, you can pitch them, they're gonna make a decision right then and there. You can, and nobody would be shocked by that because they're like, hey, but you're trying to do business. I get it, I understand it, but I don't know you, I'm not interested, whatever. They're not going to sort of like be disgusted by the fact that you're maybe going in and, trying to see, hey, is there an opportunity here? But very often in the US and in France, there is an important stage of relationship building to build up what we call the know, like, and trust factor. I need to know who you are. I need to know what you do. I need to kind of like you as a person. And I need to trust you that you know what you're doing and that you're going to be able to help me to get results. And that's why in that program, in the LinkedIn program, which is American Client Magnet, we actually go through all of these stages. How do you work on your profile so that people, when they come and they see it, they like what they see? How do you decide what you're going to be posting on so that people can get to know you and know what you're all about? And then how do we also talk about what you're doing, the clients you've worked with, so that they trust that you know how to get them results? In terms of differences between American buyer psychology and French buyer psychology, I think it goes back to Americans will make a faster decision, in the sense of it's just like, okay, that's kind of interesting. I like the concept. Let's try it out and let's see if it works. And it goes back to that idea of they're more willing to buy faster to try something out that they're maybe not 100% sure that it works, but it's like, hey, let me buy it and try it and I'll see. Whereas I feel like having dealt with French customers, you really have to do a lot of convincing. You've got to show them, you've got to speak with them on the phone to answer their questions, which are sometimes written on, the sales page. People don't read sales pages maybe. But it's a lot more accompanying the person in their decision to buy, whereas an American is more likely to look at something, kind of make that decision and be like, hey, let's try it out. Very often, one part, and this is kind of interesting because in France, there is that sort of, what is it, période de réflexion, where you've got 7 or 14 days for no matter whatever reason to come back and say, hey, I'm not satisfied, give me my money back. That's a legal obligation. In the US, there is nothing like that. The customer is only protected because the company says, hey, if you're not satisfied, you've got 30 days to try it out. You've got 90 days to try it out. And what happens is it's very easy when you're not satisfied to go and get your money back. Whereas I found, oh my goodness, in France, sometimes, even though there is that protection, trying to return something to a store and get reimbursed, it can take like 4 weeks. So I think there is also that maybe in France, people are, even though they are more protected, they're a little more hesitant because they know that if it doesn't work out, it's going to be kind of complicated to get a refund. Whereas in the US, there is no protection, but people want to offer good customer service. They want people to come back. So they're going to make that process easy and make it easy to buy and easy to get a refund if you're not satisfied, to create that good customer experience.
Really interesting.
Mm.
And to finish this episode, let's talk about relationships. You said this is the secret sauce to make LinkedIn work for you. Most people focus most of their efforts on posting, but the real magic happens in relationships building.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is, I feel like when we post, you get that hit of dopamine. Meaning you get the reward. I'm going to send this thing out, and then I'm going to check every 20 minutes to see how many likes I got and how many comments I got. And there's kind of this immediate reward. So we tend to maybe focus more energy on posting. We know that right now, what is this, April 2024, so we're recording this. The algorithm on LinkedIn, it just sucks right now. There's no other word for it. I think everybody has seen that their posts are getting less reach. They're mostly reaching their sort of first degree connections, which tend to be people they already know, their friends, etc., not necessarily their clients. So what that means is that your posts, continue posting, but maybe if you had 1 hour each day to dedicate to LinkedIn, I would say maybe post 3 times a week and then spend the rest of that time building up those relationships. So This means looking at who liked your post, who commented on your post, who viewed your profile, because sometimes they look at you, but they don't interact. It's that kind of silent majority. And going and looking to see who is interacting with my profile in some form, and then reach out to them, invite them into your network if they are not in your network, and if they're part of your target audience, and just start a conversation with them. Hey, so and so, thanks for liking my post. I appreciate your support. I'd like to invite you into my network, and just something very nice and friendly and human. And then you can get into a conversation to just kind of ask, I saw that you looked at my profile or you liked my post. Or, and you can ask them, are you just interested in the content that I'm sharing? And that's cool. I appreciate the support. Or, is there something I can actually help you with about getting more American clients, for example? And then you're going to know right away. The person's going to say, yeah, no, I really liked your post. It was interesting. I thought I'd follow you. Okay, great. Have a great day. I'll see you around on LinkedIn. No, you go about your lives, and you kind of build up a little bit of goodwill. And if it is someone who you can help, then they're going to say, yeah, we're actually, with my company, we're starting to go into the American market, but we're not quite sure about something, we're not sure where to start, for example. And then you can get into a conversation and be like, hey, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? And so again, going back to that whole neurolanguage thing, helping the person to stay in control. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? They're going to say yes or no. And if you say yes, all right, yeah. So tell me, what have you started doing so far? What research have you done? And you just kind of get into a conversation like you would be in a conversation with a friend who comes to you and says, like, I don't know, I've got a problem with my roof. Oh, well, is it, do you have a leak? Do you have, you need to replace it? There's termites. What's the problem? Who have you called? And you're going to get into that conversation. And then perhaps at the end say, you know what, I can help you with this. Why don't we get on a call, 20 minutes, no pressure. I can just look at what you're doing, offer a little bit of advice. If you want, we can see how we can go further together. If not, I'm just happy to have a look and help you out a little bit. And you build up your relationships and your trust that way. And again, even if that person doesn't end up working with you, you're also adding on to your real world experience of working with clients. And that's a good way also to, keep really your ear to the ground, as we say, to really stay on top of what are the problems people are having? What are the questions that they're asking? You can turn that into content, and that's going to create more people coming over to your posts and looking at them and interacting with them. You get into more discussions, and then that's how you build up your clients.
Oh, it's really interesting. Thank you for sharing all that with my listeners.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Maybe I have one last question. It's more, maybe my listeners won't be interested, but I'm wondering, I have a problem on LinkedIn, and maybe you can help me to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm working with both French speakers and English native speakers. So on LinkedIn, we can have two profiles.
Right.
If an American person arrives, he can read my profile in English.
Right.
But the banner, we can have only one banner. So it's really hard to be specific. If I write English or French, it's not the same message.
Yeah.
It's really complicated to try to have an impact on both French native speakers and English native speakers. Have you already had this kind of issue with your clients, and how can I find a solution? I don't want to create two accounts.
Right. Yeah. No. Nobody, like, oh my goodness. No, managing one account is enough work. How can we manage two? So what I would do in that situation, there's a couple of solutions for the banner question, because I agree. And I don't know why you can have two different profiles, but you can only have one banner image. Okay, it is what it is. So what I would do, there's a couple of options. The first option is you could do, first of all, looking at your banner, really reducing it to the minimum amount of words that you put on that banner. The reason for that is so that you can have room on your banner to put in one message in French and one message in English. And actually that way, your audience, they see that you speak both languages, and it's very easy for them to go and look at it and to understand it because it's in their language, and they can just ignore the other language, for example. But in order to do that and have a nice clean banner, you're basically going to have to reduce the amount of words that you have by at least 50%, because otherwise it's just going to be very crowded and very difficult. And I might even recommend almost splitting your banner in two. Let's imagine your brand colors are, I don't know, red and blue. Maybe you've got part of it, it's red, and that's written in English, and then part of it is in blue, and that's written in French, so that visually you're also separating out the languages. So that could be one way to do it. The other way is to just not put any words on your banner. And I've seen banners that are just like these very nice images that have, I would say they are coherent with what the person does. If we just take an example, let's imagine somebody who is working in a startup that creates, I don't know, satellite components, for example, to go into space. Maybe their banner image is going to be, an image of a satellite and a beautiful photo of the Earth or something like that, so that we know that they're space related. And then when we want the details, then we can go and look at their headline, which will be in French or in English. So that's how I would manage that problem.
Oh, I love it.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't think about it before, but I love it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, yeah. So you've got two options, and then it just depends on, and test it out. You can try both and see
Yeah,
what looks good, what works, and yeah.
yeah, and I can write both. Sometimes I can write in English, sometimes I can write in French, and they
Mm.
will see that I have to, but they can see that I'm
Yeah,
working with both French native speakers and English native speakers.
exactly. That's it. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it was really nice talking to you today,
My
Christina.
pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast, Celine. I'm very honored to be on it. And I just want to say good for you for doing a podcast in English. I mean, a podcast in French is great also, but like you said, going out of your comfort zone and being brave to do that. Yeah, no, congratulations. Keep up the good work on that.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, see ya. Bye.